that the YouTube has started. Perfect. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It is 6:11, and I can confirm we do now have quorum with the arrival of Councillor Bohm. Present from staff this evening are Elizabeth Fawcett, Committee Clerk. She is our meeting host, and Tracy Snow, Manager of Rural Economic and Community Development. She is also present. And I am Ian Sullivan. I am the committee clerk. There is currently one person in the public viewing gallery. With all that out of the way, very happy to hand it over to you, Madam Chair, to get us started for this evening.
Thanks, Clerk Sullivan. Welcome, everybody. Great to see you, and I'm glad we can proceed. So we shall proceed with calling the meeting to order and the approval of the agenda, please. That was circulated last Friday. Moved by Councillor Oosterhoff and seconded by John Wernham. All those in favor? Show of hands, that's passed. Confirmation of the August 8th minutes.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
About the minutes, sorry. I just wanted to ask you about clarification on the very last line in there. Sorry, not the very last line, bear with me. Where it talks about where I had a brief request to consider, I'm just looking for it here, forgive me, for another meeting related to the nitrogen reduction. And I think in the minutes it shows, Madam Chair, it talks about pollution, and I never would have come up with that word. So it says pollution, and I'm just talking, I think the discussion we had was related to the potential for the federal government to bring a reduction. And I'm wondering if that could be changed.
Through you, Madam Chair, that absolutely can be changed. I apologize. I was out of the meeting at that point. So I was unable to take some of the minutes or some of the notes at that time, and I was relying on the closed captions at that point after the meeting. So through you, Madam Chair, I do apologize, Councillor Oosterhoff, for putting words into your mouth. I will make sure that those are edited and changed before they are posted on the website.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It's bizarre that I can't actually find the little paragraph now, but I just happened to read that.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, with any more discussion on the minutes? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended? John Wernham, seconded by Councillor Oosterhoff. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please. Show of hands. Thank you. And that is passed. Okay. Next, we're looking at item 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Anyone to declare? Seeing none. Okay. Agenda item number 5, delegations. I don't see any here listed on the agenda. Are there any delegations? There are not, Clerk Sullivan. So moving on, no delegations. And item 6, briefings. So under briefings, I understand Tracy Snow is with us, which is great, and will be with us consistently, the Manager of Rural Economic and Community Development. So I'm going to give you the floor right now. Thanks, Tracy. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And if I may, Clerk Sullivan, I believe actually Clerk Sullivan had COVID the night that we had our last meeting and was very ill, but still worked the meeting. So yeah, please forgive him, Councillor Oosterhoff. He was under the weather that evening, but was still attending.
Awesome.
All right. Okay, so as promised, I am updating you tonight on the discussions that we had from our last meeting and discussions on the requests and moving forward on some of the projects that we're doing in regards to the rural economic strategy and my role as well. Please feel free. So I'm not doing a PowerPoint tonight. It's really based on the conversations and the questions and some of the feedback that you were looking for from the conversations at our last meeting. I didn't feel a PowerPoint was necessary, but I want you please to feel that you can interject and ask questions as we're talking. This is a report per se based on, excuse me, Clerk Sullivan, don't get upset. This is a report per se based on the city's process, but it's also a conversation for us to have based on the projects that I'm working on currently that you have shown great interest in from the past meeting. All right, so I am following the agenda, and we are going to be talking about the discussions, rural agricultural development. With regards, and please stop me at any point if you have comments, questions, or anything. So with regard to number one, community training farms, I'm just going off. I have a lot of notes, a lot of information to be sharing. The community training farms. So wanted to talk to you about, we had an event on Friday, which was fantastic. Councillor Oosteroff was present, which was amazing. The community training farms, just to refresh everybody, is a project that we've received funding for the Skills Development Fund, and money that has been given to us by the province to support a community on-farm training program at the southwest end of Collins Bay Penitentiary. We have Ayla Fenton from Loving Spoonful, who has hired somebody and is also acting manager to train. We have now 28 participants, was 25 the last time we spoke, 28 participants doing on-farm training until November. She actually now has 2 greenhouses that are part of that. So I have met quite a few of the participants as well. November and December, St. Lawrence College is going to be working with us to do skills trades training, which will be welding and carpentry and electrical, hoping to kind of complete a training piece for these individuals to support them with being a generalist with regards to on-farm training and understand what it's like to be working on a farm. Friday, we had our media release and our media event at the community training farm. Mayor Patterson was kind enough to speak on my behalf. I facilitated the event. We had 4 media outlets, 2 councillors, including Councillor Oosteroff. We had the MPP's office, a representative from the MP's office. We had the president and CEO of St. Lawrence College, one of our partners, John Conrad, who's also with St. Lawrence College. We had 3 representatives from the Corrections Service Canada, including the warden, who was kind enough to also attend. The province represented themselves who were funding this project, our local representative, which was fantastic. And we just spoke about the partnership that we've created and what we're doing. It was a fantastic event. We got a lot of coverage off of it. Feeling really strong about moving this project 2023. Had a lot of questions from people, the community, some farmers are calling us, what is going to happen? How do we hire these 28 individuals? What does this look like? So Ayla Fenton is working with me to look at what those next steps are. Finalizing training with St. Lawrence College, November, December, with the goal of doing either mentorship or some sort of on-farm working experience with our farmers directly in the region. And hopefully the goal would be late winter hiring the 28 participants. We've had 2 participants out of the 28 that have actually reached out to me who want to start farms. So an interesting discussion on that one. Finding land from an agricultural standpoint for a new farmer is next to impossible. Finding a parcel of land that they can attempt to even try to be a farmer on, I think is a little challenging. And so one of the gentlemen who was actually participating said, I want to start being a farmer. I can't afford to buy any land. How do we make this happen? And I think one of the things that I'd like to discuss with you tonight is, are there ways, and I've had some conversations with Charlie Foreman, which I was hoping he would attend tonight because he was part of this conversation. What does this look like? How can we help some of these individuals who aren't necessarily getting employed by farmers, but maybe looking at starting their own farms? Are there ways that we can be, collaborating with existing farms, their property on a lease option? Is there, and again, I haven't talked to anybody about this. I'm bringing this to the table tonight for your thoughts. Looking for your conversation, if that's okay, Clerk Sullivan. Thank you. Any comments with regard to the community training farm? Yes, sir.
Go ahead, John. I'll let you go
I
first.
was going to say, go ahead, Gary.
Well, I think it's a great question. And certainly over the years, as far as centrally being involved rurally as this role, I think that's a great need. That means we've identified it. And I think that there is land available that is dormant, or that, we really need to make that an important file. And I'd really love to hear from Allison as well in her role with the Frontenac farmers, and let that be on their agenda too, and seeing how, their meetings, and obviously John's going to say something too. I think that that would be an amazing success story if we can send the word out, and this aging farmers. My industry, electrical, is aging. We have a serious issue, in getting the young people in, and we're working very, very, very hard on that, and finding success. So that's what we need to do, and I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say.
I think Madam Chair just said John, although she was on mute, so I'm going to take advantage.
Sorry, yes, John, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Tracy, I'm sure you've heard of the National Farmers Union's efforts to do land sharing stuff. I attended one of their meetings years ago.
Josh Supan and I have been talking about it a little bit.
Yeah, and so I think you're right. Like and I mean, I've experienced it. I got very lucky with Farm Credit Canada. It is exceedingly difficult for someone who is one generation off the land to get back on the land. But at the same time, and this is kind of what I'd like to do with my legal practice, existing farmers seem to get really leery when you start throwing things out there like the land use agreement. Let's incorporate your farm, and then we're going to bring them in as a new shareholder class. So I'd love to talk more about it, because it almost seems like a mindset change. And like, I'm looking for myself, even though I am a young farmer, I would love to have other people come on basically as on-farm partners, to be a beekeeper, to be a whatever. So one thing that was available in Ontario, and it's still alive but not very effective, it's FarmLink.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem to work that well. So I wonder if Kingston could do some sort of comparable thing, and just sort of have a database of farmers looking for someone to use, X number of acres, any sort of caveats they might have, so that people could almost come to you and you could say, well, fun fact, I've got this guy who's got 10 acres that have been sitting fallow. Over to you.
Yeah, and I think that's a conversation, John, that I wanted to get your feeling first as a group, and just see where you're at. We're just starting to be having conversations with these participants, and they still have their training with SLC to happen. So there's still a little bit of time, but trying to think ahead about, how can we help them if they're not going to be employed? How do we help them be self-employed? And I think that maybe if there's some interest from the group tonight, I think that's a conversation that I need to go back to our city departments and go, what does that look like? So how do we, I am quite sure that there are many bylaws in place that we need to be addressing in that regard. And so happy to be having conversations with our internal departments about what are those bylaws and procedures in place that we have to be looking at. Can we do lease land options? Can we do what are those options? So I wanted to get a feel for your interest to see if it's something worthwhile. And then I absolutely in turn will go back to our city departments to see what do we have to do to make option A, option B, option C, come to fruition. I can bring those back to you and say, okay, so here are 2 or 3 options that we can be looking at for potential entrepreneurs, farming entrepreneurs, to be taking advantage of existing land. One of the sad things that I hear, and I know all of you are hearing this as well, is that we hear about leased land happening with regards to farmers who have a lot of land. I've even heard, and nobody will admit this, but I've even heard that there are developers that are making deals with existing farmers with a lot of land for future development down the road. And that's not even just Kingston, that's everywhere in Eastern and Southwestern Ontario. How do we stop? And again, development is great. I'm not disregarding development of any kind, but how do we help support the agriculture industry that doesn't have a succession planning option because families aren't going multi-generational anymore? It's just not happening. And, how do we support new farmers at whatever capacity, with the land that we have in our region that farmers aren't using. So, sorry, go ahead, please, Madam Chair.
Yeah. I recognize Councillor Oosterhoff has a question.
Yeah, just on that comment, Tracy, like I know that in the city, I have requests from people who want to develop their land. You cannot develop agricultural land. I'm sure John and Allison would know that too. It's just never going to happen in the city of Kingston. Okay, so it is protected. I see land all the time for sale. I just see another beautiful chunk along Unity Road. I saw the signs the other day and said to my wife, I want to buy that. I want land too, but no. But for agricultural purposes. So I would think, Tracy, that there is tremendous opportunity. I believe that land sharing within many farmers, I would think even someone like Charlie or whoever has land. I co-own land up in Sydenham with my daughter. It's only 10 acres and it sits dormant. I guarantee you I'd partner with someone who wanted to help use that land to get that land going. But anyways, I think that we need to develop it further, and I'm happy to join with it. I think that there is great potential there personally.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, John, go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, I just want to put one more point in there for the minutes. So we've got this rural development fund. We're getting, money from Samsung. And this is perhaps a bit crazy or politically unpalatable. But if the city of Kingston has a rural economic development strategy and climate preservation strategies, perhaps there's somewhere where we can get multiple birds with one stone, and that we're using that money to pay for the leases so that people who don't have the money out of pocket to lease land themselves or to buy land are nonetheless providing something that is for the public good and in the public interest according to all our strategies, and getting some public funding to achieve that aim. I think the money might be there, and if we could just bring the people and the money together, we can take some tangible steps toward achievement of strategic goals. Thanks.
Yes, go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, so just, John, amazing idea. And I think that there's quite a few options that we can be looking at. I believe, and I don't know the exact policies in place, but I believe that the provincial government does not allow municipalities to offer any incentives whatsoever to properties or to businesses with regards to free lease. So the municipality of the city of Kingston could not give money to somebody to have a free lease. But there are ways that we can be looking at that. I've worked in other municipalities in rural communities before where we've adapted. Again, I think if we can maybe, if you can give me some time to go back and look at what some of those options are. And John, I would love to, have those conversations about what are those options from a legality standpoint as well. Like what kind of business setups can we be looking at? Because I know, with your legal background and your agricultural background, and we've worked together before, but I think if we can come up with a few options of what that looks like, where we stand in terms of bylaws and zoning and, business setup with regard, for new potential farmers. If you could give me some time, I could come back to you and say, here are some options. Yeah. What does that look like? And try to give some answers to you in terms of the choices. Is that something?
Send me some of the things that you think are regulating this. And I'll try to see where the holes are.
Okay. And Clerk Sullivan, just step on me if we're over pushing our boundaries. Okay. Madam Chair?
Yes, I'd just like to pass the chair. Councillor Oosterhoff, if you could take it from, I just have one question.
I received the chair and recognize you.
Thank you. Tracy, I want to get a better understanding. You have a group of 28 people, which is great. People who want to get earn and develop a skill set to run a farm. And there are apparently, I don't know how many, but a couple or maybe even only one who wants to acquire the training, doesn't want to work on the farm, but wants to own one. I want to better understand where that's coming from. Is it a function of the person's age? I guess I'm just thinking mentoring opportunities, land leases, I'm just trying to understand the underlying motivation. It just seems to be coming out a little bit out of left field. I want to get trained. I don't want to work for somebody. I want to do my own thing, and I want to better understand it, especially if they have no background in farming or agriculture, anything like that. I would think a little bit of mentoring would be a great idea.
Yeah, so absolutely. So if what I found out was in conversation with a few of the participants, they of course wanted to be employees because they're learning, but, and this is my entrepreneurial background and my background with Unisanta County and economic development and working with rural and agriculture for years. There are a lot of people that also say, I don't mind being the employee, but oh my gosh, like I would love to do this myself. So it wasn't out of nowhere. It was just a discussion of what are your goals? You know, so in talking to some of the applicants and the participants going, what are your goals? Like, where do you want to be? And some will say, well, oh my gosh, this program is great. I'm looking forward to the mentorship and, you know, working on a farm, but my ultimate goal is to own something myself and to build something myself. Well, that's why we also hired me, because then my role, and we have a new business support office that I'm overseeing and managing with a new employee. Our goal is actually to support that agricultural piece as well and support new entrepreneurship in the agricultural world. So I see a lot of people wanting to start farming, and Charlie Foreman would tease and say, you know, well, there's a difference between, you know, farming 2 acres and farming 400 acres, and absolutely respectful of that, because there are different variations of what farming looks like, and one is no better than the other. They all serve a purpose. So I think what we're just allowing the conversations to happen to see what the potential is in a bigger picture. If that helps your answer.
Yes, yeah, yeah, different for certain. It goes back to the, you know, the personality of the person. And I'm just trying to think if, you know, to build options, I would hate to, you know, that's one option of maybe this employee could be paired with someone. If there's no opportunity for generational transfer, then, you know, there's an opportunity for somebody to come into a business. Yes, an existing farm that maybe is a lot larger than a couple of acres is a lot to carry, is a lot to get involved in. But yeah. I'm just trying to think of all the different ways that we can support people. Depends how much they want to bite off too. Exactly. Okay, no, that's great. Thank you.
I would, and just so you know, from my experience and what I bring to the table here is I would never, ever, ever have somebody start a business in any sector that wasn't prepared. That would just never happen. So that's my role as well. And I would never just assume that somebody who has taken 4 months of on-farm training at the corner of Days and Front Road is prepared to be a farmer. Not saying that that's the case, but what we do see is we see excitement and opportunity where people are saying, okay, I want to be an employee, but oh my gosh, like, how do I do this? So I'm very much the mindset that we follow process. This is a skills development training program that we have developed. But boy, if somebody wants to start a business, then I'll support them in that regard as well.
Yes, carry on, Allison.
Just a supplementary question. The average age, is this a young group and involved in this program? Can you make any comment to that, Tracy?
So as far as I know, I don't know the people directly, just from a confident, well, I guess I could if I could ask, but we don't need to know their names and demographics. That's Ayla's job at Loving Spoonful, is managing the project. I would probably say they're in their late 20s, early 30s. Yeah, so they are definitely younger.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll return the chair.
Thanks. Okay, moving on, Tracy.
Thank you. So next topic of discussion is the Kingston Public Market redevelopment. Right now we have an RFP out to the public with Bid and Go. It was, I guess, posted 2.5 weeks ago by Rec and Leisure. So the Rec and Leisure department put that RFP together. The RFP is meant to be for an operator of what will be a new Kingston farmers market at Market Square. Currently, we have a Kingston Public Market. Because of the designation policies for farmers market, we don't have 51% local farms participating. The idea behind having the RFP out and having an operator on board is that we can repeal the existing bylaw that enforces the public market designation, and then look into creating a farmers market opportunity, understanding that we don't want to be bringing new farmers into the farmers market and not have them make money. So there's a sensitivity to how we manage this, how it looks. So I am part of the RFP committee. And the idea right now, the discussion right now, is that I will oversee the operator for the farmers market at the Kingston Market Square. So that we're hoping that end of September is when the RFP closes. And we're going to be doing a review with any applicants that come through with regards to the RFP. It will be an independent operator working in guidance under the City of Kingston, which would be me. And then I would work closely with Rec and Leisure. I work closely right now with all the other departments and the partners in regards to Market Square itself. So part of planning meetings, what's happening with Market Square, because there's a lot of opportunity for food opportunities, food security, training, education, local food. And I'll talk a little bit more about an event that we're hosting as well, that I think is really relevant to the planning of Market Square in general, not just the farmers market portion. And Lenny, our CAO, is very engaged in having me involved in terms of supporting that process. But definitely the farmers market portion and the redesignation over, we're hoping the next year or so, will be under my oversight. Is there any questions on that?
Any questions from the floor? Seeing none, great work. That's moving along well. Okay, great, carry on.
Okay, next one is and my apologies for maybe not pronouncing it properly, the Cecil and Wilma Graham Park. So in our last meeting, John, you had mentioned about, oh my goodness. So you had mentioned in a positive way, you had mentioned about the motion that was in place on December 7th, started, that came from this committee. That motion, so I confirmed with the clerk's office, that motion went to council on January 11th. Please forgive me if I'm missing a day or two. So January 11th, council approved the motion that John, you had presented in December to then send information to the province, to relative parties in regards to funding, supporting our rural communities. So it was based on your motion in December that went to council January 11th, was completely approved on January 11th. And so I wanted to update you, and I'm just sort of looking for my notes here. So I did some digging to find out what actually happened. Oh, sorry. I'm so off. No, we're not even, my apologies.
Yeah, you
Oh my
just jumped
gosh.
from Cecil Graham onto my motion.
Cecil Graham Park.
Yep, sorry, that is complete. That's the other thing that I have to talk about, the motion.
Come,
Sorry,
exciting.
Cecil Graham Park. All right, here we go. So you had asked me also to do some digging on the background of Cecil Graham Park. My apologies. I have so many notes in front of me. I did. So I did some digging into what was happening at Cecil Graham Park and what had happened at the park and what happened to the private launch, the boat launch that was there. I reached out to one of our staff members at the City of Kingston from the engineering department and some of his staff. And I asked about, and I also spoke to Jenna James, who has also been privy to what had happened with regards to that project, and also is hands-on in regards to the Samsung solar funding as well. I did not know this, and I've been told by the staff member that I'm allowed to talk about this openly. So there is, as part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update in May 2021. So as part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update in May 2021, staff recommended the acceleration of Cecil and Wilma Graham Park small boat launch improvements in the 1 to 5 year timeframe. So there is currently money that this currently sits on our 2024 capital budget at around $300,000 for council's consideration. So this is public information. I spoke to this staff member in engineering about what their goals were and what they were planning on doing, because I didn't know anything, and I don't imagine you guys have been presented any information in this regard. And I said that we had some money from the solar fund project that we were thinking could go towards a park and a private boat launch or a boat launch of some sort. He was absolutely willing to have a conversation about working collaboratively, because we don't necessarily think that 300,000 on our end and the solar project would be enough. And the 300,000 that they have designated from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan would be enough, but maybe combining the two in a one-time project could be enough to make this happen. Nothing has happened since that conversation, because I wanted to present it to you and see where you wanted to go from here. The other comments, sorry, just to actually add to John's comment earlier, and I know we had spoken about this in our last meeting. I think we should also talk, so I have been given permission to talk about what future money, which is about $90,000 a year, what future money could go towards rural economic development and rural support for projects to benefit the rural communities with that solar fund. So not saying that the solar fund would just specifically only go to the boat launch, saying that maybe the portion that we have, that 300 and some thousand that's there now, be added to the current city fund to make something happen. And then down the road, we could look at future spending on that solar fund for any rural projects that we can continue to discuss about. Sorry, so that's it on that point, if you want to interject.
Any questions, comments? Yes, Councillor Stroff.
Yeah, thanks, Mentor. That's very interesting to me, and I know that Ryan and I both are concerned about and involved in boat launches. And I do know that there are sensitivities, and Madam Chair, just a reminder if the public wanted to speak on that as well. I'm wondering if the member of the public was there for that reason. I did get a phone call related to concerns, but I know, I mean, I'm eager. Hopefully in our lifetime, we will see this amazing property become a park. You know, it's something that I am passionate about as well. But I do think that we need to, there's a lot in there to discuss, Madam Chair, about the funding, the redirecting funds, existing funds. So I'm probably, I will leave it at that. I don't know where to go with that, but I think we need to be careful, a little bit careful with that one. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, John or Councillor Baum, your hand was up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Just to sort of follow up on Councillor Oosterhoff's comments, I know that he has, as well as I have, had numerous comments about the lack of boat launches, especially in the rural area. We seem to be losing them far faster than we're adding them, and the ones that are left are you know, in somewhat questionable condition, and some of them are still private, which means there's further risk that they could be shut down. So I think personally, any opportunity we get to add a boat launch, and if it's something that the city can have that's public, I think that's even better, because it guarantees that it will be there in the future. The private ones that are out there are great assets for most people, but there's always the risk that that land is sold, or the landowner just simply decides, you know what, I'm not doing it anymore. It's not worth the hassle or the liability. So anytime the city can leverage this or move forward on this, I think we have a responsibility to basically move along and flesh that out as best as possible. Access to waterways, and we know this as part of our waterfront master plan, is something that we want to maintain and actually improve for the vast majority of the people in the city. So when I look at the waterfront master plan, it does include a lot of rural areas, but I also consider access to waterways to be the ability to launch boats from as well, so that people who are living in the northern parts of the city can find public launches to be able to enjoy watercraft that they have. So I look at this and it's like, if there's an opportunity to combine funding to move this forward, I think it's a great opportunity to explore further. I also think it's something that might help people gain more interest in the Rural Advisory Committee, because it would be something tangible that we could put our name to say, hey, this is something the Rural Advisory Committee was able to direct funds towards. And that might help people sort of understand, you know, how we champion rural access to assets, and basically just raise our profile a little bit amongst all the other committees in the city. Because there are many times where people get asked, well, what do we do there? And we are more of an advisory committee, to be sure, but at the same time, this is something where, you know, if in advising the adding of boat launches, we can actually bring some forth, I think that that will help really raise our profile in a positive light. Thank you.
Thank you. Your hand was up, John. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I sense a motion in our future about what to do with this money, and to give some advice to council. As I understand it, we have $368,000 currently sitting in this fund. We don't know what to do with it, and this boat launch thing has been around for years, and nobody serving on this committee really knows where it comes from. It's just there. I will contradict Councillor Boehm's points with respect. Of course, there are people in Kingston, being a waterfront city, who want better access to the water. But I would say that those who have watercraft might also have the resources to privately fund their own waterfront access. And something that the city is publicly funding to improve basically recreational access to the Rideau Canal is serving a quite small subset of the population at a fairly high cost. If $300,000 isn't going to do it, are we going to end up with another $1 million park asset that's not really benefiting the city as a whole, but just those who are wealthy enough to afford boats that they can spend their recreational time using? I think that I'd rather see something that aligns with one of the city's strategies. If we've got $90,000 per year looking ahead, and we've got a capital sum, why don't we think about something like a dedicated bus to serve the rural areas? A couple of years ago, I asked our public transit people what our fleet was, and they had no surplus. So any talk of improving service to the rural area would come with something else. So what can be done that actually serves the rural community instead of just showing urban Kingston what's useful about having a large swath of low density area? I'd rather look to the interests of the rural community first, rather than, oh, I don't have any data on who wants to use a boat launch, but I'm thinking that perhaps it's people who are living in the urban area. Councillor Boehm shaking his head.
I recognize Tracy, your hand was up first, and then I will get to you, Councillor Boehm, for a response as well. Thank you.
So thank you, John. So just a thought. So one of the reasons I believe that we were talking about the boat launch was an alternative way to be utilizing the Kingston Solar LP funds. So each year during the lifespan of the project, Kingston Solar LP provides the city with a $92,000 contribution to the community benefit program. The funding must be allocated. So currently, with council, in previous council's approval, the funding must be allocated in the following three areas. And the reason why we were talking about the boat launch is that a little concern is that a lot of times over the years, it's just gone to funding for trees. And we thought, well, couldn't we do something that was different than trees that could support more of the community? So there's three pieces right now that have been approved for the funding to be allocated. Planting trees in the public right of way and on private properties in the area of the Samsung area, park improvements, which would include a launch, and acquisition of parkland and natural lands. So right now, council has approved, based on the project, that $92,000 a year go to either one of those three or any of those three. If we want to, and please know, John, I absolutely hear what you're saying in terms of the other economic benefits and supporting rural community. No question, I hear you. We would, and it's probably, it could happen, we would just go to council and we would have to then work out a revised funding allotment with regard to this project plan.
Okay, Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Yeah, if I could just follow up, I completely understand where Mr. Wernham's comments are coming from. I just wanted to be clear, it was actually the vast majority of people that I was hearing from, and I'll let Councillor Oosterhoff comment, but were actually people from the rural area who were commenting on the loss of rural launches. So essentially, there's been multiple ones over the last few years that have either degraded to the point where they can no longer be used, or they're essentially just closed off, or there's no parking and no real access to them. So it was actually more coming from the rural area itself, saying we're losing access to the water. So most of the urban residents that I've spoken with that use the launches typically use the ones within the urban core. So it's just to be clear, it would actually benefit, in my mind, more the rural area. The other comment about trying to provide a bus or something like that, Councillor Oosterhoff and I are working on a pilot project for the rural area. So I would hesitate to say that we would use those LP funds to provide servicing for a bus or something like that, because that is something I believe that should be funded by, the larger pot of taxpayers. So I think that might be a dangerous road to travel down, simply because are those funds always going to be there? Should they be used for that? 92,000 is more of an, I'm looking at the cost of a boat launch in mind. I see that as more of a capital expense, which is sort of one-time output of, let's say, 300,000 seems like a lot, but then the ongoing maintenance is not very much. But running a bus and paying for somebody to drive that, if we got into that, that's a significant amount of money. I believe, a bus operator's wage alone would probably be close to 60,000 a year, not to mention the capital cost of the bus and the maintenance. So I'm not sure we'd want to go down that road just based on my experience. We're trying to think of capital things that this fund could fund, which would be there, kind of for at least, let's say, 25, 30, 40, 50 years with minimal maintenance costs. And then that way we're not depleting the fund just with one decision. So I would just add that context. I do agree that rural transit is something that we want to push, and probably something we as a committee want to try to champion a little bit more as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. John, did you want to comment further?
No, I just was putting it out there as an example. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any more discussion on Cecil Graham Park? Is there a motion to be made based on this discussion at this point in time? To give a little bit more substance to people like Tracy for direction?
So.
Yes, Clerk Sullivan, go ahead.
So through you, Madam Chair,
yes.
There is a member of the public here with their hand up. However, if we are in the briefing area of the meeting, the public would not be able to make any comments, nor would motions be able to be put on the floor. Motions, but also if a new motion or a motion is arising from any sort of discussion, it would have to be provided to me in writing. So if with the committee's kind of approval, I would say instead of having us have the separate briefing and business item, especially since this is a little bit different of a briefing, we're just going to consider that we're doing them kind of at the same time. And so we will be allowed procedurally to have members of the public John Main. So we're also right now in business items number 7. Yes. So then once we're all done this conversation, we can move on as well. I just wanted to make sure that everything's kind of procedurally clear there.
That's great. I was going to ask you that. So perfect. So at this point in time, any other questions from the committee on this particular topic? Since we're in business, members of the public are allowed to ask a question or speak. So if that individual would like to do so right now, go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this point in the meeting. Having lived on Aragon Road for 34 years now, I have some background on that boat launch, which for generations was a public boat launch. Turns out it was privately owned. And when the land changed hands, the new owner closed the boat launch on Aragon Road. Some people on the road were furious, some were grateful. Hundreds of people in the city probably were unhappy. On the opening day of bass season in June, you would see, 30, 40, 50 boat trailers parked along the road from people getting into the lake from there. I'm no expert on boats or the social class of people who own boats. They didn't tend to be fancy boats. A lot of them were boats with a 15, 20 horsepower motor on the back, and guys were going fishing for the day. So were they urban? Were they rural? I have no idea. But it was clearly filling a need, and it took a couple of years for people to realize they couldn't get their boat in there for bass season or at other points in the year. That said, should you use the Samsung money for it? Well, I think in the list that staff provided of things approved by council, the first item is still really important. The Samsung solar farm is a disgrace, or not Samsung, the first one on Unity Road, right? The screen was horrible. In the rules that the procedures that we devised after that farm was built, they would have had to provide a better berm and better screening. But since the community benefit should go to the community affected by the farm, let's get some trees there. That would be my advice to you, and not use it way over here, many kilometers away, even though it's in the rural area. As terms of the Cecil and Wilma Graham Park, which was there was no public consultation when that park was created. It was simply a deal to get rid of some land that the Grahams didn't need and exempt Wilma from taxes for the rest of her life, which ended up being a great deal for her. There has never been, to my knowledge, any kind of public consultation in the rural area, let alone in the neighborhood, on what to do with that park. The only thing that's been done to it in the last few years is planting as a reforestation project. As both councillors know, some of us on the road are still not happy with all those trees being planted there without anybody being asked whether it was a good idea. So please don't go planning things for that park without talking to the neighborhood and people in the rural area, whatever it is you want to do. So get a document, put it out there, let's see what people think. Councillor Oosterhoff is right. Some people on the road would say, no, we don't need all the traffic. We don't need a parking lot there. The parking lot that's in Graham Park at the moment is bad enough in terms of some of the things that go on there at night, some people would say. Others would say, look, it's an obvious place for a boat launch. It's an obvious place for people, including the rural area, to have access to the water. So there are trade-offs there. This committee, I think, has the obligation to ensure that the rural point of view is taken into account, whatever the park's planning people want to do. They have a tendency to think that they don't need to talk to people out here. Your job, I think, should be to say, yes, you do. Let's have that conversation. Let's see what people in the neighborhood want. Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much for those comments, Mr. Wolf, very, very much. Anybody else want to follow up? Respond, Tracy, any of the others on the committee? Really appreciate the comments, Mr. Wolf, and thank you for joining us. Yes, Councillor Oosterhoff, go ahead.
Yes, I think that was really some really good advice from Mr. Wolf, and I don't know how to do that. I have to admit, maybe Councillor Bowman can help me, or through the clerk, can we as a committee ask for, is this a public meeting, or how do we receive public feedback on development of the park? How do we do that?
So through you, Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may, sorry, I kind of jumped the gun there. So in terms of getting public feedback and stuff like that, that would have to come from either from a staff report or from like a motion. So it can't kind of organically happen that way.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, motions have to be in writing, and they also have to have kind of a notice so the public can see it coming. And in terms of public engagement and things like that, that would have to be work done with from this committee and probably through Tracy with Parks and Recreation to bring something to this committee that the committee can then have input on at that time.
Madam Chair, if I may continue, that's something that Ryan and I can work with and try to have something with Tracy for the next meeting, I guess. Is that something?
Okay. I recognize John Warnham, and then you, Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I'm thinking that a motion is taking shape. And Clerk Sullivan, this is just a notice, don't worry, this isn't an actual motion. That after the next municipal election, when we have a confirmed roster of councillors, we should be making a motion as the advisory committee to be given deciding powers as to what to do with this fund. That the city council delegate to the rural advisory committee this limited power to make decisions concerning the use of this fund and make a binding motion saying, instead of having council decide what to do with this fund, this committee can convene a public meeting and have, just hang on, Clerk Sullivan, don't worry. I'm not gonna say anything too untowards here. Where we have been granted the authority from council to make a binding resolution disposing of whatever funds are available from this community development fund from Samsung. That would, I think, do a nice job of keeping the focus on the rural community and making it more administratively, well, maybe not more, but at least notionally more administratively streamlined than going through council, back to parks, back to this committee, and so on and so forth with several series of consultations.
Okay, Clerk Sullivan, you had your hand up. Is this in response? I know Tracy had her hand up. Is it a direct response? Then go ahead, Clerk Sullivan.
It's more as a kind of an advisement. A lot of stuff about delegated authority, a lot of advisory committees can't have delegated authority. So you're more than welcome to put a motion forward to our department, Mr. Wernham, and we will be able to tell you whether or not it's procedurally possible. We will look forward to seeing that in writing.
Law, we can totally do it.
Okay, Tracy, go ahead.
So this was brought up. So in December, excuse me, in a previous, it was last year actually, when I wasn't part of the staff. I know that this had been discussed with your committee previous to my starting, and I was asked to bring this up at the last meeting for discussion because there was a pocket of funds that was available that hadn't been utilized yet, and they wanted us to support the Rural Advisory Committee and let you know that the city of Kingston is thinking about the rural communities and wanting to support them in a way that we can possibly. I am happy, and Clerk Sullivan and the committee, please let me know. I'm happy to go back to the engineering department and have them do a report for the next meeting to have a discussion about what that could look like. I'm just not sure what next steps look like. I completely understand where everybody's coming from, and so grateful, Mr. Wolf, for your contribution of comments. Absolutely fantastic. And you're right. This is out of, I'm just being a middle person with regard to the fund. I don't manage the fund. I'm just letting the rural committee know that we have access to these funds. What can we do with it? I'm not sure that, I agree. We need a public engagement of some sort. I don't think it can come from us. Sorry, go ahead, Madam Chair.
Well, I'd like to pass the chair if I could, just to ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead. I recognize you.
Thanks. Through you, Chair Oosterhoff. In the past, prior to COVID, this committee has, I thought it was part of the work plan when I first, when you look at your annual work plan, that this committee has an opportunity to host a public engagement meeting on an issue that is of concern to the rural community. And would this, if that's the case, we haven't done it because we haven't been able to meet in person, but perhaps once the next municipal election is passed and we may go back to meeting in person, wouldn't that give us an opportunity to perhaps look at hosting a public engagement? Because I'm pretty sure this committee was able to host one a year. This might be a good opportunity to address exactly the very important point that Mr. Wolf did make, that this requires public consultation. It is not a decision that this committee should make. We need to ask the neighbors, especially when one of those neighbors, Mr. Wolf, who lives on Aragon Road, feels that it's important to address the berms that are on Unity Road in front of these solar projects. And there might be some more people who feel that way as well. It's a significant amount of money. This is something that probably could, anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. Is that not something that we can do? Clerk Sullivan, go ahead. Sorry, back to you, Chair Mr. Roth.
Clerk Sullivan, go ahead if you have.
Yeah, that is through you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair. That is correct. This committee did once host a public meeting. I think it was about Lyme disease. That is possible. We would want to work through the committee and through our department to kind of get it set up. We would probably, as you state, want to wait until after the next municipal election and make sure COVID rates stay low and we can possibly return to in-person meetings, as we just want to make sure everything is kind of in a good place before we fully move forward. But absolutely, that is something that can happen, and we can have a chat about that offline as well.
Yeah, that's great, Allison. I really appreciated your comments too. And I know that this is good because we're going to get somewhere now. Thank you. Go ahead, Allison. I return the chair to you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments to the point in the discussion about Cecil Graham Park? Or shall we close this? Okay, thank you. Back to you, Tracy, item number 4, abattoir.
Thank you. So understanding we're tight for time. Abattoir. So just a little update in terms of the abattoir. So as I mentioned in the last meeting, the Napanee federal facility is not going through. The gentleman from Thorpe Farms, Corey Priest, couldn't get the funding that we were hoping to get in his raise. With regard to the Wallace Meats Abattoir in Joyceville. So Bruce Wallace has publicly announced that he is closing the abattoir at the end of this month. He has informed Correctional Services Canada that he is leaving the abattoir at the end of this month, and the people under his employ will be losing their jobs. I have had great lengths of conversations with multiple levels at Correctional Services Canada to find out what they want to do with that property. Corey Priest, and I'm allowed to talk about this, he's given me permission, has tried numerous times to have conversations with Bruce Wallace about taking on that business. No resulting comments or talking about that had ever come to fruition. So right now, Correctional Services Canada has a responsibility to post this publicly through the buyandsell.gc.ca. I believe I'm being told by one of their senior department managers that it's being posted either late this week or early next week, and they're going to send me the link when it is. They are also, quite a number of the departments at Correctional Service Canada are informed that there could be a potential operator for that facility, and that building bridges and relationships for that facility is key, and having a trusting partner and operator on that site is key, because I'm being told that they are under a lot of scrutiny right now at Corrections Canada because of the previous operator, who I don't know. I'm just telling you what I'm being told. And that there's a lot of repairs to be damaged in terms of community perception. There are a couple of groups that have gone to the media, which are concerning, to even allow that abattoir to come back into operation again. So I just wanted to give you an update. This is kind of where we're at. Any thoughts or comments on regard to that piece?
Yes, Councillor Wisterhoff, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that. I think that maybe Mr. Wernham, who would know more about that, but we certainly want to see that abattoir continue. Is that not right? I think that is, and Allison, you would have a lot, Madam Chair, you would have a lot of knowledge from area farmers. And I mean, I saw the comments in the paper the other day, and I saw the good letter from your association, from the fellow correcting the media's slant on this. But they don't understand rural life and what is part of our economy. And so I'm hopeful that there will be a better outcome here, but it's not necessarily in my wheelhouse. I don't know what's going on there. It's bigger than me, of course, and us, but I am thinking we want to see this continue, and I'll wait to hear what you all have to say.
Thank you. Tracy, response?
The other important piece to know is as well, and I'm sure some of you have used Wallace Meats previous, Bruce Wallace was only operating at 25% capacity. So that facility itself was not being run at full capacity, which is an absolute opportunity. If we lose that facility and we didn't get the new facility in Napanee, it's heart-wrenching, right, to our agricultural community. And I'm hearing that other abattoirs in the region are also struggling with equipment operational issues and timelines and booking times. And so it's really important that we try really hard to work with Correctional Service Canada to make this happen. And for me to support and our whole community to support whoever this could be in terms of the operator to help build their business model and be successful.
Further comments? Questions? Well, I have a question if I could pass the chair.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. I receive the chair and recognize you.
Thank you. Tracy, what about this this failed attempt in the Napanee area? It's not that far from Napanee to Joyceville. Is there any opportunity? I mean, this was an individual who had a business plan and then the rug was pulled out from under this at the last minute. Can you share anything with, is there any opportunity there?
Yeah, so I know we had talked to the last meeting about, is there any way that the city of Kingston could maybe support this, the region, with whether it's Lennox-Centon County and city of Kingston and Leeds and Grenville and County of Frontenac, how do we work collaboratively to make this happen? I'm just not sure we would have an operator that had been 150% engaged now. And I worked really closely on the project for 2 years, as John knows, and John did too. The potential operator was $1 million shy of his raise. It was a lot of money. It was very substantial. So the challenge at this point is a very deflated potential operator, thinking things were going to happen, a community that I'm no longer working in as an economic development officer. So I'm now working for the city of Kingston, and really just wanting to help this sector wherever that is, honestly, wherever that is, wherever we can make it happen. To do a new build, you're looking at $8 to $10 million. If we could get somebody to take on the old Wallace Meats at the Joyceville Penitentiary, the Correctional Service Canada is willing to work with us in terms of what those renovations look like, expansion opportunities. I mean, we have St. Lawrence College sitting, waiting, for conversation about training and collaboration. I mean, there's just so much potential for it to happen. We just need to figure out where, and the most cost-effective at this point, doing everything I can.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll return the chair.
Thank you. Any other comments to this important subject? Questions? Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So that is quite surprising news, Tracy, but at the same time...
Sorry, surprising with what?
That Wallace is closing down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's hard to know what actual impact that's going to have. The disclosure of pecuniary interest, I've done no business with him. None of my poultry and none of my lambs have gone there because they were completely unreceptive when I approached them. Although the price tag is quite steep on a new build, I really, and again, this is one of those things I'm going to throw out there, and perhaps we can find something where Kingston's looking towards being a food hub, doing something to finance or be a partner, have a part ownership stake in a new build of an abattoir, maybe in the realm of the possible, because I don't think that losing the facility on the correctional services ground is any great loss. And from what I understand, and my understanding is not good, there's no scope for expansion at that location. So I don't think it's that big an impact to the total slaughter capacity for Eastern Ontario.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been told that they were only operating at 25% capacity, so there's still room to grow even with the existing facilities.
Hmm.
And believe me, I'm doing everything I can to look at other options. Everything I can.
Thank you. Anything else to that point? All right. Community Kitchen Training Day, Tracy.
All right, Community Kitchen Training Day. So as I've mentioned to you in the last meeting, we have access. So internally at the City of Kingston, we have access to 3 commercial kitchens, one at Rideau Heights Community Center, one at the Kingston East Community Center, and soon to be with some minor additions and renovations, the Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, which we acquired in January. We have these great facilities, and my thought is I want to be able to show the community, our food producers, our agricultural community, our residents about what it's like to use a commercial kitchen and why it's so important in terms of creating local food. We have our local businesses calling saying, how do I buy more local food? How do I get access to more local food? We have community residents that are looking for more local food. We have farmers that would love to support creating more local food. So I had done this program. I had actually ran the event about 6 or 7 years ago in Lennox-Hampton County. It's in partnership with OMAFRA, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Farming and Rural Affairs. Sorry, it's a very long acronym, a short acronym, long name. Working with OMAFRA closely, I know them very well there in creating a day on November 8th. So it's a training day that we are hosting to teach people a number of pieces. So what are the regulations, both from a provincial standpoint and a community standpoint? KFLNA Public Health are also working with us on that day, as is the Canadian Federal Inspection Agency and OMAFRA. So we have all 3 partners with regards to food and producing food. And then myself with regards to helping, what does that look like as a business model? Why would you even consider making food locally? As a food producer or as a farmer, what does this offer in terms of extra revenue generating, and what you can be doing is extra revenue generating? I've spoken to a number of farms about this training day, and they all said, oh my gosh, like if we had residences that were interested in making food, I would grow more food. Just let me know what it is. I'll grow more food and I'll sell it to the resident who wants to make it a business and then create food. So I'm pulling together and working to put together November 8th as a training day. The goal right now is to have it at Rideau Heights Community Center and have about 50 people attending of all sorts, residents, food producers, farmers, whoever is interested, and then show people the purpose of having these local kitchens that they can then make commercial food that they can be selling. Yeah, so I just wanted to give you an update on what is going on with that. Is there any questions?
Seeing none at that point, great. That sounds like a great date to spread the word. And just a typo in the actual report. It's November 22, not 2023.
Oh yes.
Right?
Oh my apologies. Absolutely.
That's
Thank
okay.
you.
Just
It's
double
definitely
checking.
2022.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
All right.
We can have it again in 2023 too.
Well, that's my goal. My goal is to have it more often.
Perfect. Great. Okay. All right. Now we'll deal with the December 7th, 2021 rural funding motion, Tracy.
So back on that conversation that I was having about our December 7th motion that went to council on January 11th. So what had happened was the clerk's office, literally the day after January 11th, had sent out letters to Mark Gerritson's office, 2 of the different ministry offices of MAFRA Agriculture, Scott Reed's office, Randy Hillier's office, and Ian Arthur's office. So a letter, and I believe Clerk Sullivan, if you can let me know, I believe this letter is public. Thanks. Okay. So if you're interested in seeing it, we're happy to share. It's a standard letter that went out to all of these offices that basically is reiterating the council report on supporting the Community Futures Development Corporation boundaries and expanding those boundaries to allow Frontenac Community Futures to be supporting our rural Kingston boundaries as well. I have a note from Holly Wilson. So I reached out as soon as we had our last meeting in August. I reached out to find out what exactly happened and where these letters went and where they were going. Holly Wilson is doing some research for me. She's the manager of intergovernment relations for the city of Kingston. And she's doing some research in terms of finding out who do we speak to now, because some of those people are no longer in place, and how do we make that conversation happen again. I'll be honest, and I believe Derek was also part of the conversation, one of our clerks in the last meeting. I didn't even know this happened. And so my apologies. I was really new in the role. I didn't know that this had happened. And so I would have, in January, after council had approved, would have taken that and moved forward with that and done some more digging. So because of our conversation in August from our last meeting, I started doing that, and I'm doing some more further digging. I've also had conversations with Frontenac CFDC, with Ann Pritchard, to see where she's at and what she's doing. So she also supports us, in doing that push. She is under the impression, it's a federally funded situation. So she's under the impression with the federal government, who she speaks to regularly, that it is under review, and that she's supposed to be hearing some answers at some point by the end of this year in regards to expanding her territory for funding and resource options for rural Kingston. We are not alone here. Ottawa, there's a lot of other cities in Ontario that are also asking the same thing and asking for a rural push out with regards to their community futures offices. So I am talking to Anne regularly. We have one of our staff members that are also working with the various groups to be supporting and looking at that as an option. And my apologies, I just did not know about this happening until you had brought it to my attention the last meeting.
Thank you, Tracy. Questions? Yes, Councillor Oosterhoff, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. Just wanted to thank Tracy for doing this. This is actually important. I don't think this happens too often, that something gets dropped or where that something becomes unclear of where it's going. So it happens, and I'm glad that we will get to the bottom of this. And like you said, there's work to be done there, but hopefully we've caught it now, and things will be back on track. So thank you, Tracy, for doing that. One more thing to mention, Madam Chair, but I think I'll wait for, and sort of in context here, maybe not. So I'll wait till other business.
Okay, well, perhaps I'm going to allow Mr. Gordon to ask his question, and then we can come back to you if you'd like, okay, or we can deal with it a little bit later. Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tracy, for digging into that. So what I'm hearing is that we're really still at a loss as to who controls these things, and I've even gone through Hansard to find out, like, when was this discussed to establish it. Must have been somewhere in committee, because I can't find anything that set these things up, or who controls them, who has the final say. So I think that it actually is the federal level that we must focus most of our efforts on. Yes. With hopefully, God willing, some advocacy from the province and support. So that's really all I can add. Thanks for your work, Tracy.
Thanks, John. Back to you, Councillor Oosterhoff, or not at this point?
I'm going to ask you, Madam Chair, and then the clerk too, if there is a relation here, and if we're allowed to discuss it, because I'm being brought involved with the electoral boundary redistribution. Mr. Clerk, yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, Clerk Sullivan. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, the federal district redistribution is a totally federal process. The City of Kingston has no part to play in that process. So the best choice in that regard is to communicate with, I believe it's a committee of about 4 or 5 individuals that are kind of in charge.
I've been invited. I'm invited there, but I will be working on that. But I was wondering about the rural advisory role, but I will consult individually with my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Valid point. And certainly it it's relevant, but it's to the timing of that relevance. It's extremely relevant. It
Thank
is
you,
a little
Madam Chair.
tricky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
for
tricky
sure.
one, but thank you.
Mhm.
I'll be reaching out to you guys.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions to that point with respect to the rural funding motion? I just want to say thank you very much, Tracy. Very thorough report, bringing us up to speed. It's just comforting to know this is moving forward. And when you say things that Ann Pritchard is aware that there's federal funding and this is under review by the end of the year, and there's other jurisdictions in the same boat, and I can certainly understand that when it's based on a population formula. So hopefully there will be enough impetus and see the importance of food security, and that includes the jurisdiction that is just outside these cities are very, very important. So hopefully they won't get passed over. We'll look forward to further updates because you're on this and we're grateful to you for that. Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, let's move on to alternative servicing options. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just to one other point. So, and also please know that this is just not the only piece in terms of funding or opportunities that I'm looking for. Anything from a provincial level, anything that comes forward in any regard, provincial or federal, that comes past my desk. We also have a full-time grant manager within our office who's also been told anything that comes across his desk, he's to let me know. I will absolutely be sharing those opportunities in any regard, in any way that we can make this happen. So it's not just this piece that I'm looking at every piece. And I have done that for years, but I'm now specifically doing it for rural Kingston.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on then.
Okay, so number 7, alternative servicing options. So just briefly, I had mentioned nothing really has changed in this regard. I had mentioned to you at the last meeting that really kind of looking to see what alternative servicing options there are. Frontenac County is currently doing a project right now in Sharbot Lake with alternative servicing options. We speak closely with South Frontenac about what they're doing and some of the research they're doing with their alternative servicing options. We have a Queen's University student that I'm hoping, it's an application process through the MBA program that I'm hoping to bring on this fall that will help us kind of look at what's happening across the country and around the world that we can be possibly considering for rural servicing options for our area, understanding the provincial limitations and our current city limitations, and of course, also understanding that we're not here to be pushing the city of Kingston or to rural Kingston. We just want to support our existing hamlets and our existing infrastructure to make it stronger.
Comments, questions to that point? Seeing none. Okay, we're going to move on to rural tourism opportunities. If you could speak to those. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, I'll be quickly. Open farms, Kingston and Frontenac. So that happened on the weekend. We had 2 farms participating, Fat Chance Farms and our community training farm participating in that event. It was a Saturday, Sunday event. I went and toured both locations on Saturday, and they had great response, great feedback from participants, a lot of engagement. I thought it went very well, actually. And and I think in terms of our media announcement on the community training farm on Friday, and then to have open farms at the community training farm on Saturday was just a bonus. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. Is there any questions in regards to that?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Stroff.
Yeah, thanks. Here's Tracy. Where's Fat Chance Farms? How come I don't know where that is?
That's okay. Fat Chance, it literally is on 38. His entrance is at the City of Kingston ensign. Like he's just the last farm in the City of Kingston.
Okay.
On the west side of 38.
Is that, who is that again?
Josh Hupen from NFP.
Yeah, it's Josh. Okay, I know where he is. I
Yeah.
did not know that for some reason. All right, thank you. That's helpful.
No problem.
Any other questions for Tracy on the Open Farms event?
Yes, go ahead.
How did the ticketing go? Was that smooth? The whole logistics of people buying tickets in advance? Were the farms overwhelmed? Was it, just comment to that point?
No problem. So this was a County of Frontenac handled project. So the arrangements that I've had with the County of Frontenac is they would manage the operations for open farms, which was last weekend. And then my idea was then I would then host the harvest. So the open farms harvest in October 2nd as a celebration of that. I would do the work for that piece. Frontenac would do the work for the open farms piece. And of course, it's been their project for 6 years. So ticketing was a little challenging. Because of COVID, what had happened was it was a full-on open event. It was really discouraging 5 years ago with farmers because they would have hundreds of people just show up without rhyme or reason and timing. And it made it very difficult for people to do it effectively. So then when COVID hit, quite a few of the farmers decided that they were going to do ticketing, and they did it themselves. It went very well. We thought we would help the farmers not do the ticketing themselves. And we actually engaged the ticketing through our office, through the Rec and Leisure Department. We have never had any issues with the ticketing in the past, but we've only ever had one event, one ticket, one person. This particular event had multiple events, multiple bookings within each event. So one farm would have multiple timings, multiple people applying depending on the time. And I don't believe, if I'm being honest, the software could handle that kind of integration. It was just overwhelming for this particular ticketing software to manage. We had one of our staff members from Rec and Leisure was phenomenally, just beyond amazing, trying to compensate and organize and support. The other piece that was a little challenging is that in the past, many of the farms did not charge. And so we found that some of the farms, most of them, I think actually the community training farm was the only one that did not charge. It was an open farm day. Everybody else charged. And we had been hearing that families and people who were looking at it didn't want to pay the money to go to the farm. So that was a little sad and disappointing as well. And I don't know if it's because of COVID, the economy, inflation, gas prices, the war. My gosh, we could just go on. I think there was a lot of reasons why the ticketing probably wasn't as strong as it has been. It was the first year we had done completely full ticketing. It had never been that way before. Like last year, Josh at Fat Chance Farms, he did ticketing on his own. Other farms decided not to. They left it open. So there was a little bit more flexibility. This year, you had to buy a ticket. You had to follow the process. It was a little bit more rigid. Definitely a conversation. So we're having actually a follow-up meeting tomorrow. Frontenac County and myself are having a follow-up meeting tomorrow to find out, what went well, what didn't, what can we change. It's always been a successful event. So I think it's a little hiccup. I don't think it's a really big problem in the grand scheme of things, but we are doing a follow-up meeting tomorrow.
Okay, any comments, questions?
Yes, go ahead, Madam Chair.
Through you, Chair Ustroff, that's a little disappointing if the ticketing and I guess as an potential audience, most people for events like that, in my experience, kind of wait until the day to see what the day proposes. So it's not to have a rigid ticketing regimen is not conducive to people just going and participating on a whim, which is a little liberating. Sometimes it's hard for people to commit. So that could be an issue. Having participated in the one in 2019 when it was super busy, and possibly farms were overwhelmed for sure as far as trying to accommodate parking. Just some interesting lessons. Limestone Organic Creamery hosted their own 10-year celebration in August, and it was really, really well run, and they didn't charge. I know, there was many people were there. I think they had 400 people. They scooped ice cream for that afternoon, and not everybody had an ice cream cone. So I'm wondering if there's, I'm thinking out loud here, but if an event like that can happen and it celebrates agriculture and it basically achieves the same goal that Open Farms was about, is there an opportunity to maybe not reinvent the wheel and reach out to, to businesses and support them? And maybe they don't need the support. Maybe they're fine to do it autonomously on their own, but without duplicating efforts. In a way, that event was in a competitive, it was with 3 weeks before Open Farms was held. And when people are telling you they didn't want to pay the money, that's unfortunate, but I totally can understand that. and totally appreciate that as well. As someone who feels like they're doing open farms every day when I run a retail business, and, you know, people coming in and experiencing our property, and it's, you know, and we're not, hopefully we get a sale at the end of the day, but we're not charging them to have extra experiences when they do. So it's, and I'm sure the committee will have lots of things to review, but that's a little disappointing that the rigid ticketing maybe was a bit of a barrier to getting people there. Anyhow, thanks for all the work on that. Not any work on this, just know is good work.
Oh, thank you. And just a comment. So the two farms that participated within the city of Kingston, of course, I had a little bit more control over in discussions with Josh's $20 ticket went towards buying anything in his store. So it went to something that had value, right? And in fact, and God bless them, he even had people that called and said, I just don't know how to manage the ticketing. Can I come there and just pay you? And he's like, absolutely, just come here and pay me. So with regards to the two farms that the city of Kingston participated, it was smooth. We were fortunate. It was a trial this year for open farms to be doing it collaboratively with Kingston and Frontenac. It'd always been a Frontenac initiative, even though Kingston had participated. We've talked about this before. They wanted to, share and work together on this. Definitely for discussion tomorrow in our wrap-up meeting, I promise. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Madam Chair. That was helpful to hear your perspective on that too. As for Tracy, that's good. I return the chair to you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else with respect to open farms, Kingston Frontenac? Thank you, Tracy. Again, excellent. And okay, open farms harvest.
Okay, two last things, and then you can have your evenings. Open Farms Harvest is, as I had mentioned in the last meeting, so it is going to be an event on Sunday, October 2nd from 1 to 4:30. We have taken over Market Square and City Hall for the afternoon. We have posted it, so it's now actually been launched on our event page at the City of Kingston website. May I ask, Elizabeth, can you share the 4 photos for me? So just to show you some of the creative that we've developed. So this is just we have different social media platforms, different banner platforms. These are just examples of some of the pieces that we've created. Thank you. And so this is a ticketed event for $75 per ticket. 10 and under, age 10 and under is free. As part of the ticket, we have 6 chefs, all confirmed right now. So a chef from Aquaterra, a chef from Bella Bistro, a chef from the Everly, a chef from Cafe Belong, a chef from Sally's Roti, and Otter Creek are participating. We have confirmed that we have 11 farms right now that are offering food paid as part of this event to supply to the chefs to create tapas and tastings and canapes. We have 2 breweries confirmed, McKinnon Brewery and Daft Brewery. We have Stock and Roast Cider, Flat Rock Cellars, Clausen Chase Vineyards, just confirming County Betty Soda, and also confirming Haymakers Coffee to be participating in terms of the beverage portion of it. So the ticket includes a plate that we're having made by Stone City Woodworks. So everybody receives a wooden, kind of a very small charcuterie board, which is their tasting plate that they get to bring with them throughout the event and taste food with their plate. They get to take that home with them. It's theirs to keep. And they can sample food and wine and beer for the 3.5 hours as part of their $75 ticket. We have 3 demos as part of this. One demo is how to build a charcuterie board with local wine and sausage and cheese. We have another wine and cheese pairing demonstration. And we have also one farmer, hoping for 2, to be speaking about their farm experience and what they do and what agriculture is about. To me, this event is 3 pieces. It's an education piece to our community to show them what our agricultural community does and who we are and what we do and the local food that's so important to them. Second piece is it's a celebration of harvest and an opportunity, for us to really reach out to our farming community and our residents as we create a new farmers market at Market Square with the City Hall. And the third piece is also just a celebration of open farms and our partnership with Frontenac, and a celebration of our farming community, and that we are actually seeing you and hearing you and want you to be celebrated, you know, at the city level. So those are, and they're all in relation to our county council goals and priorities. And we're pretty excited. The other piece that's also part of it is we're hoping, and I would love your thoughts, please, and if you can really do a push out, we want to have like a pseudo farmers market wrapped around Market Square as well. So the demos are going to be inside Memorial Hall, inside City Hall. And then all of the wine and the food and the beer and the beverages are going to be outside of Market Square. So we're completely closing off Market Square for this ticketed event. And then we'd like to have farmers with tables and not necessarily selling. We want it, it's an education piece. So I want farmers to be having a table and talk about what they do and who they are and their history and how food is really important to them and what it means, and have them kind of wrapped around this event. And then the other piece is that the chefs are also going to be talking about all the local food and the farms that they're using that local food from as they're, you know, supplying canapes and tastings to the participants.
Excellent. Wonderful. Okay, Councillor Roostroff, let's kick off the questions.
Yeah, that sounds really great, Tracy. I'm very excited about that. I'll definitely be there. I wrote 2 words just as you're talking: education and celebration. Exactly what you, exactly what we want to do. I'm a little surprised on the pricing. I mean, I'll pay it, but is there a family fee, or I don't? So I can see where things are going to cost money, but that's high. Just tell me why. How does
Yeah,
it
so
get?
we went back and forth on the price. There was a number of us that talked about this in terms of the price. I have Julie Fawcett, who runs the Grand Theater out of our office. We talked about who the customer is, who that client could be, what does that include. 10 and under are free, completely free. So it's 3.5 hours of wine and food, and a charcuterie board that's included that they get to take away home with them as well. There isn't a family price, but we have said 10 and under is free.
Okay.
We launched on Thursday, and I believe we have quite a few ticket sales already. We're
Okay.
selling 150 tickets.
150 only. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's available online, the city website?
On the city website on the event page.
And Rural Advisory Committee just are able to attend, right? We'll just go.
I'm sorry. I've been asked, we could probably work something out, but here's the thing. I really need help. I need farmers to come, and I
Yeah.
need more engagement from our
Yeah.
agricultural community. I'd
Okay.
love to have farmers talk about, you know, have a table and just not sell things necessarily, but just talk about what they do and who they are. And I think that's, to me, the education piece is key. It's
Yeah.
really key
Yeah.
for
No
this.
awareness and all that. I mean, this is gonna be great synergy there. I think that, wonder why you wouldn't, it's not here to get ideas, I guess, but give me a call. There's gotta be ways to promote that really well. I know you know what you're doing, but I'm happy to give you ideas in my head. So carry on. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing you there.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, excellent. And this will be a good event, and certainly reach out, Tracy. And yes, we will also, I'll do what I can too to see about getting more people to just, you know, the farmer idea, just being there to celebrate. It's not the hard sell, it's just bringing people together too and get people talking.
Thank you. And any farmer who participates has a table supplying food. They get paid for the food, but anybody who's participating in terms of having a table at the event, it's free. It's free to get in. There's no charge for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Wow. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, a really comprehensive report again. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I know having the meeting quick on the heels within a month of our last one was a big ask, but thank you so much for obliging us and keeping us on track, and yeah, just bringing us up to speed on everything. All right, so we have combined the briefings and business part of the meeting. So moving on at this point in time, we're on to motions. Are there any motions to present? Clerk Sullivan, any motions that were submitted to you? Okay, no motions to discuss. Notices of motion? Nope. Okay, other business? Seeing none being raised that I can see at this point. Correspondence, has the committee received any correspondence? Clerk Sullivan, no. Okay. All right, item number 12, date of next meeting. So it is scheduled for Monday, December 5th, 2022, which is post the new election. Clerk Sullivan, can you make a comment if we will be able to have that particular meeting in person? Can you shed any light on that?
At this time, we are not quite sure. I do also want to quickly mention we did lose quorum. So even if I did know, I wouldn't be able to really say because we've technically ended the meeting. But as we have lost Councillor Oosterhoff, but to my knowledge, no.
Okay, all righty. Okay, no longer quorum, so I can't ask for adjournment. The meeting is over, but thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate for making this happen. Have a